Yesterday on the channel, I talked about how these Hollywood strikes, the WGA strike and the SAG AFTRA strike, are starting to affect the elites in Hollywood. We're not just talking, we're affecting low-paid writers, we're affecting people, guys that operate the cameras, all that kind of stuff. We're talking J.J. Abrams, we're talking Chuck Lorre, we're talking Greg Berlanti, we're talking Mindy Kaling, all being affected by this because their deals have been shut down. It turns out that's just the first domino to drop when it comes to this, and it appears that Warner Brothers Discovery taking this decisive action at this time is going to lead to even more producers throughout Hollywood being affected. This is a direct follow-on article talking about those events happening, their deals being shut down, and what the reaction has been, and it doesn't appear good. This news came as a shock to some who hadn't realized a decade of TV's biggest names were still drawing a paycheck and a harbinger of coming pain for others. Sources across the studio and streaming landscape predict more suspensions will come, largely in non-writing executive producer ranks in the weeks ahead. As one studio exec put it, Warner Brothers just gave everyone else cover, added another, "We'd been waiting for someone else to go first." It sounds like there were a lot of studios out there just waiting for a reason, the green light, to start shutting down major deals with these really big producers that are out there that a lot of times are the real power behind these projects that really bring them to fruition and are the power behind getting them just into television and obviously onto movies and stuff like this. Apparently, everyone was waiting to see who was going to be the studio that decided to take the black eye for the team and actually start suspending some of these major deals. And obviously, David Zaslav and Warner Brothers Discovery are the first ones to do it. They talked about how they were projecting to lose between $300 and $500 million in this fiscal year, directly attributed to the strikes going on with the WGA and SAG AFTRA. And apparently, Disney were waiting for this, Netflix was waiting for this, Apple was waiting for this, Amazon was waiting for this, everybody was waiting because there were a lot of bad deals a couple of years ago that kind of stretched into maybe 6 months ago, but a lot of them had already been purged once these studios started realizing what kind of losses they were going to take, not because of the strikes, this happened before that, but because of streaming itself. They had to start streamlining their business and start cutting some of the extra fat. So really the deals that they didn't want to have, maybe the producers that they didn't think were really weren't bringing value add to their streaming platforms or their movies or whatever, those had largely already been ended. They had kind of already purged all those. And really a lot of the deals that have been left are with the people that these companies would like to continue doing business with into the future long term. And you can see why a lot of these studios would have waited as long as possible to actually put a halt to them, not to end them outright, not to fire them or whatever, but just to put a pause in there, because you can't really do work when you have a writer strike and an actor strike unless you have reality television where you don't have writers. If you have one of those shows, obviously like the Kardashians and shows like that obviously have writers, but if you have a program that doesn't have writers or actors, you're probably okay. Otherwise, you're pretty much screwed and you're at a standstill unless you have something that's been completely shot and just is being edited, is in post-production. Then you can continue on working, but eventually you got to run out of those programs too. And now all these studios are in this really weird spot, and we're going to see the real effects of this strike really to start to take place over the next few weeks. At Warner Brothers, execs are said to have waited as long as they could before suspending what was left of their active deals. The Paramount and Disney-owned studios, as well as Amazon, are among the dominoes expected to fall next. Disney has been very nice about their non-writing executive producer deals. That will change, says one knowledgeable source, with another one adding of Amazon. Those that haven't been suspended will soon. At this stage, none of Lionsgate's deals remain active, and while Sony TV suspended every writer on its roster back in May, it agreed to dole out weekly deals for producing services. The studio still has active non-writing deals as well. So you can see the chatter around Hollywood for those in the know, those that are associated with the studios have realized now that Warner Brothers have taken this giant leap to start suspending production deals with people like J.J. Abrams and Chuck Lorre, everyone else is going to have to follow suit because there really isn't any end in sight for the WGA strikes and the SAG AFTRA strikes. In fact, I believe the rumor out there was that the WGA strikers had decided in solidarity with the SAG AFTRA group that they wouldn't come to terms and return to work until they did as well. So now it's kind of a package deal. And by all accounts and reporting, there hasn't been any meaningful negotiation going on between any of the sides. none of them have been able to come to the table, acknowledge what the real issues are, the real situation within Hollywood, and strike a deal that makes sense for everybody. Nobody's ever going to get, in a negotiation like this, no side is ever going to get 100% of what they want or even they feel like they deserve. Everyone is going to have to give up something, but eventually somebody's going to have to budge on this one. You actually have to come to the negotiating table and start drawing up terms for some type of settlement. Otherwise, things are going to get a lot worse. You can only not have a paycheck for so long if you're one of the members of the union. If you're the WGA or SAG AFTRA, you can only stay on strike and not be drawing a paycheck for so long. Yes, some people are going to have saved for that, but not everybody, and likely not most people have done that. And then when you're a studio, you're a publicly traded company in most of these cases. In fact, I believe it's all of these cases. And you have to answer to your investors. And if you're not bringing in money from your television deals, your movie deals, your streaming deals, and basically you're just net losing it because you don't have any new content, you can't really project out what your earnings are going to be based on the projects you have in the pipeline, their place in the production cycle, you're going to get a lot of negative feedback. Your investors are going to get very, very mad, and they're going to wonder, why aren't you at the table hashing out a deal so you can actually move your business forward? Now, some of these businesses are a little bit different than others. Obviously, when you think of an Amazon, they are not really an entertainment company. They're more of a technology company. Apple would be another good example of that, to where entertainment isn't going to be the primary driver of the revenue. Although Disney is an entertainment company, I would imagine with their parks and services and stuff like that, television, movies, and streaming isn't the primary driver of revenue. So those companies might be in a little bit of a better spot, especially Apple and Amazon. But a lot of these other companies are pure entertainment. And if they aren't producing new movies, new streaming content, new television shows, there's no reason for them to exist. So eventually somebody has to budge, or they're going to have to start cutting the deals that they wanted to keep. The ones that have been suspended, they're going to have to start terminating those as well. And there's been a lot of talk about force majeure, including in this article. In an era of heavy cost cutting, many industry watchers predicted that by this point in the strike, the studio would have terminated a slew of deals under force majeure clauses, but that is yet to happen. If the stoppage drags on, some execs predict terminations could become unavoidable, particularly at the more vulnerable studios. But for the time being, almost all the deals impacted have been suspensions rather than outright terminations, and many will come with extensions to make up for lost time. The reason, multiple studios and streaming sources say their deal rosters have already been culled pre-strike. So in essence, kind of adding on to what I was talking about before there, to where a lot of the bad deals had already been cut out, and the deals that do exist are the deals that these studios really want. These are the relationships that they would like to keep. These are the creative people, the creative producers that they would like to continue working with in the future. But you can also only lose so much money if you are a studio based on the stoppages of the WGA strike and the SAG AFTRA strike before you start having to kill off things that you didn't want to kill off. Unintended consequences of all this strike action, to where maybe long-term relationships are going to be severed indefinitely because they are going to be losing money. And what happens when you lose money and you have a lot of debt sitting on top of you, which is an enormous byproduct of all the consolidation going on in entertainment, you have to start adjusting budgets. You have to become more slender just as an organization. And when you talk about they've already kind of gotten rid of all the fat to begin with, at least in an allegorical sense, you're going to be cutting off body parts that, you might feel like you need to live. And those are the deals that are likely to be terminated by force majeure moving forward if they ever get to that point. And I do hope that they don't. Eventually you do actually have to talk to each other and figure out where is there room for negotiation on both sides. But if they don't actually start talking soon and it starts looking like these strikes are going to go into maybe 2024, you're going to see a lot of fallout. You're going to see a lot of repercussions, and we're going to see a lot of people lose a lot of money and a lot of jobs because of all this. Because quite frankly, without new projects, the financial ecosystem of entertainment, itself starts to break. It no longer functions. And that's what a lot of people are seeing in the future of this if they don't start negotiating. And you can definitely read it from the anonymous sources in this article. They're starting to get worried. I think they're getting worried on all sides. I think the WGA people are worried. I think the SAG AFTRA people are worried. And the studios are definitely worried. And certainly the executive producers, the partners of the studios, are getting worried at this time. Optics factor in too For those deals that studios no longer want, execs say that they are now likely to simply let them expire than to actively terminate them. As one showrunner puts it, the temperature is so hot, it would only inflate things. Added an agency partner, and these studios can't afford another wave of bad optics. They need a deal to get done. So they're kind of hoping force majeure won't come into this because I guess in their minds, and if you read a lot of the articles, the studios are the bad guys here, and they're the only ones that are getting bad publicity and bad press about that. And I will admit, there certainly are a lot of headlines that would lead you to believe that the studios are just being really, really greedy, and they don't want to compensate people for their hard work and time and all that kind of stuff. And I can certainly see that point of view, and I certainly agree with the writers and the actors when it comes to, AI. There definitely needs to be a responsible AI policy in place that keeps humans on the job. I personally believe that 100%. And I certainly believe that actors shouldn't be signing over like digital rights to their likeness and their voice and stuff like that. That is an absolute non-starter. You can't be negotiating with this. And if they do want to use your likeness or they want to use your voice, you need to be compensated for it as if you did it yourself, because they are using that for a reason, because it has value. But there are a lot of other things that are being discussed in here where I don't think the studios are out of line whatsoever, where they're saying, well, we need 5 extra people in the writer's room, and we need to be paid for so many weeks, even if the project doesn't take that many weeks. And you can see it's not like both sides are completely in the clear here when it comes to causing some of these problems. And I understand, celebrities do have like a face recognition, a value associated with their brand, which in a lot of cases is their voice or their face or whatever. But man, I would stop putting Mark Ruffalo and Fran Drescher and these other people that have probably made a lot of money within the studio system and like that, and put them out on the front lines as like the face of the SAG AFTRA strikes, and consequently almost the face of the WGA strikes. I wouldn't have those people out there. I would have people that you don't know, that probably don't have enough money to make it to 2024 if they don't get jobs. I would put people out there that you can kind of relate to, you can kind of feel bad for them, because I personally find it very hard to relate to a lot of these people just because of what they say and what's publicly been disclosed regarding their income and stuff like that. Like, I don't think you know what it's like to be a real person. I would have people that were impacted by these strikes. I would have the cameramen out there. I would have the set designers. I would have the painters, all the little guys that are really being screwed over, because it's the little guys that are absolutely eating it in this one. It's not Mark Ruffalo. It's not Tom Cruise. It's nobody that's made that much money is really going to feel the effects of this like a set designer, like a painter, or even just like a regular writer on one of these shows, to where they're probably not making money hand over fist for all of their appearances. I would make them the face of it, because I think it would make it a lot more relatable. But I know me continuously seeing a lot of these actors over and over again talking about the strikes and how they're so happy about it. I was like, I bet you are happy about it, because you probably have enough money to where it doesn't affect you like it does a normal person, like it would me. And I would make them the face of it. And that would definitely bring the studio down to their knees. They would have to come to the table because they would look really bad. But at this point, I think they look equally bad, and they kind of deserve each other just from what's been happening kind of out in the open. There's definitely been a huge slant as far as the media coverage of this, but I don't think anybody looks good right now. And if they don't come to the table and start striking on some deals, somebody is not going to care about optics anymore, and they're going to start terminating these deals, which I think is something that nobody can really afford right now. They probably want to get their businesses back in order, back flowing out with content before too much damage is done, and maybe some of these studios like shut down permanently or they're acquired. And there's been way too much acquisition over the last few years. I did talk about what precipitated this. Warner Brothers shutting down a handful of deals with Hollywood elites, A-list producers. Talked about it all right here. J.J. Abrams, Mindy Kaling, Chuck Lorre, Greg Bergani, and others. Definitely check this out right now for more information. There's also a link in the video description.